among other things, because there's a lot going on. And I am sorry for I hit the button and I must have double punched the button. So it started the live and then stopped the live. Sorry about that. There's always something crazy going on with the technology here. So I see people coming back on here. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to wreck that last live we had all the people on. Go ahead and hit the like button, please, while you're coming on, and tell me where you're coming in from. What a fun day. It's a beautiful day here in Panama, and it has me wondering what I'm doing inside, but I wanted to go on, and this is something I've been wanting to talk about for some time, and so let's do a quick live about what's happening around the world real quick. First of all, you've probably seen the news that there was a large explosion in Iran at a march to commemorate the anniversary of Qasem Soleimani's death. Qasem Soleimani was the commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. He was killed in 2020 by a drone strike from that was ordered by President Trump, and that drone strike took him out actually in Iraq and not in Iran. He was in Iraq because he was helping to direct the terror attacks that were happening against U.S. forces inside Iraq. As a matter of fact, they say that Qasem Soleimani was responsible for a tremendous number of American deaths as American troops were killed by Iranian-made explosively formed penetrators that were given to the Al-Qaeda and other militias that were inside Iraq and that were fighting against U.S. forces there. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, I think maybe on this live or maybe over on CBN's live, I actually saw Qasem Soleimani in the flesh one time when I was in Iraq during the fight against ISIS. The fight against ISIS created some strange bedfellows. And one of the things we saw was that the Shiite militias were no friends of the Sunni ISIS fighters. And so the Shiite militias joined the Kurds and the Iraqis fighting against ISIS. And so one day we were there and we were trying to get into Mosul. We were stopped at a checkpoint and Qasem Soleimani showed up at the checkpoint. His bodyguards were very brutal. They told us, do not film or you will die. And so we just kind of tried to stay back out of the way and pretend we weren't there while Qasem Soleimani went up and spoke with the guards at the checkpoint. Something happened that day. I'm not sure what was going on, or what was said, but one of the guards was grabbed by Qasem Soleimani's bodyguards and was almost murdered right there in the street. He had a machine gun. It got really, really bad there for just a few minutes. And finally they let him go. And then the Shiite militia he was with went on through. And later on we got to go on through as well. So Qasem Soleimani was assassinated by a drone strike from the United States ordered by Donald Trump in 2020, 4 years ago yesterday. Well, I guess today. Qasem Soleimani. Today, if you're on the East Coast, it's not quite yesterday it's not quite tomorrow in Israel, but anyway, so we were expecting something would happen around that anniversary, and sure enough, it was not anything that we suspected. I thought there would be a big attack either inside Israel or maybe in Lebanon or somewhere like that, maybe in Iraq against U.S. forces. But instead, the attack came at a march for Qasem Soleimani to commemorate the man. And there was a very large, actually multiple explosions. They say now at least 4 explosions took place. The death toll is now climbing over 200,000 people. 200,000 people. 200,000. Over 200 people I'm trying to read the comments and talk at the same time, and I don't do that very well. So over 200 people dead, hundreds wounded in this strike, and nobody has claimed responsibility for the strike yet, but there are some two different competing thoughts on who did it. One was that it was done by ISIS, which is kind of resurgent in the Middle East, and the other is that it was done by Iranian forces, Iranian militias that are against the current regime in Iran. The strike actually happened where Qasem Soleimani is buried, which is it's like Kermit. It's a small town very far from the western border of Iran. It's not close to Iraq. It's actually closer to Afghanistan than it is to Iraq. Thank you, dear. And so, obviously, there's going to be a lot of fallout from that. I heard some, I think Hamas or Qassam brigades that are claiming that the strike was actually carried out by Israeli, like Mossad agents or something like that. If it is, they're not going to admit to it, that's for sure. Although they did admit to striking the strike that happened yesterday in Beirut that killed 7 top Hamas leaders. Those Hamas leaders were basically hiding out in Beirut. They had hidden out in Syria, and then they moved to Turkey, and they kept getting kicked out of places, and so they ended up in Beirut. They've been there for years, and they were at least the main guy that was killed said that he was expecting to be martyred any time, and it looks like the Israelis have made good on that and assisted him with attaining his 72 virgins. Question, what's the filming on today? The picture is incredible. Well, good. I'm glad the picture's good. We're talking about the proportional response. The reason I wanted to talk about a proportionate response is because I noticed that I was counting up, and U.S. forces in Iraq have been struck more than 100 times since the start of the war in Israel, since October 7th. And what has the United States done in response to that? Well, precious little. They have hit a couple of empty warehouses, and they have struck some actually cells of Hashishabi. These are the Shiite militias in Iraq that are funded by Iran. They've struck some of those cells because they actually caught them in the act of being about to attack U.S. forces, and were able to smoke them before they were able to launch their missiles. But there have been dozens of U.S. troops injured, and what has the United States done? It's done very little. That's because the Biden administration believes in a proportionate response. Their idea of a proportionate response is if they blow up something of ours, we blow up something of theirs. And then they blow up something of ours, we blow up something of theirs. And they wound a few of ours, we wound a few of theirs. That's a proportionate response. Now, you've heard a lot of pundits and people in politicians and that sort of thing in the United States excoriating Israel for not sticking to a proportionate response when it comes to October 7th. And the question there is, well, what would be a proportionate response to murdering babies and raping girls and taking 244 hostages? They don't have the hostages back yet, and so I would say that any response that falls short of getting your hostages back is not proportionate. They're not taking hostages in Israel. They're arresting people that are terrorists for sure. But if we were talking about just a proportionate response, then I suppose Israel would have done some precision strikes on Hamas leadership or Hamas headquarters or anything like that. The problem with that is that their headquarters are all underground, their leadership is all underground, far from the reach of these precision strikes, except for the ones that they just killed for the first time in Beirut. You realize that's the first time that the IDF has struck outside of Israel and Gaza and Syria in this conflict, with the possible exception of taking down some drones and missiles over the Red Sea that were headed for Israel. So it's hard to say what a proportionate response would have looked like by Israel in regards to October 7th. However, why is that not a good idea? Why is that not effective? Well, first of all, the terrorist groups planned for that. They intend to use the rules of engagement of their enemies against their enemies. So, for example, if they know that the United States is committed to sticking with a proportionate response, then they're going to commit strikes on the United States and then try to make sure that anything they really don't want blown up is out of the reach of the United States by either being underground or being in a country that we won't go into and strike. Thank you very much. Is the window open or is the monkey in the curtains? No, the window's just open. This is the windy season here in Panama. And so it's actually kind of rainy today, which is strange. We don't get rain like that, Ellen, this time of year. Typically from middle of December to April sometime is the dry season, and we don't get really any rain at all. And it's just windy all the time up here in the mountains. It's not very windy today, just a little bit breezy. And we have actually had some what they call bajareke, which is like a mist, I guess. Hasn't rained hard, not like Panama rain, but we did have some out there when I was out there earlier today. The monkeys are in their habitat back here. Matter of fact, I'll show you. Here, let's take a look. If you want to see the monkeys in their cages out there, there's the monkeys. We have two big cages, one for Mona and one for Missy, and we're building a third cage over there that's going to be much nicer and much larger. And once we get that one done, then we're going to tear down these cages and rebuild them like those over there and kind of improve the situation for the monkeys, because I really hate that they have to be in a cage for so much time because, I mean, they're wild animals. And I wish they didn't have to be in a cage at all, but unfortunately, unless I'm physically with them, then they've got to be in a cage. And there's just so much time that I'm not here, and they spend a lot of time in those out there. So I want to make them as large and as comfortable as possible. We're putting real trees in the new cages, so we're going up and digging up giant trees and putting them in there to try to give them the best life that we can. We'll see how that goes, and thanks for caring. So anyway, back to the proportionate response. It's easy for Iran, for example, to avoid having a proportionate response meted out against it. And the way that they do that is by supporting surrogates, by supporting proxies. So the reason that Iran supports the Hashishabi in Iraq, the reason they support the Qassam brigades in Gaza, the reason they support Hezbollah and the Houthis is because they realize that by doing that, they can strike at the United States, and the United States response will probably be directed against those proxies and not against Iran itself. So that's why most wars are proxy wars today. It's unfortunate, and the reason that it's not effective is because it doesn't actually hurt the people who are causing these violent strikes to happen in the first place. You see what I'm saying? The people who are directing these violent acts, these terrorist acts, are inside Iran. And we're not striking Iran. Israel is not striking Iran. Iran helped to fund and possibly helped to plan the October 7th attacks. And they certainly have armed the Hamas fighters in Gaza to the extent, and so it's Israel that is, I'm sorry, it's Iran that is responsible for all of these attacks alongside Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen and things like that. So why isn't Israel or the United States striking directly inside Iran? Well, they're just not willing to. I mean, a real proportional response would be for Israel to, go hard against Iran, to go kinetic with Iran. Why haven't they done that? Iran has a large military, about 500,000 people. They actually have a larger active duty military than the United States does. And it's the largest military in that region. The Israelis now have about 500,000 people under arms. And so they have, beefed up their forces quite a bit since the beginning of the war. Why doesn't Israel fight directly against Iran? Well, part of the reason is that there are two countries between Israel and Iran, Iraq and Jordan, and it's going to be really hard for Israel to roll tanks across Iraq and Jordan to get to Iran. That's just not going to happen, right? And it's the same for Iran. Iran's not going to roll tanks across those two countries to get to Israel either. So they could carry out airstrikes, but that would, again, be a bit of a challenge. They've done it before, but they have to do it very sneakily because they have to invade the airspace of Jordan and Iraq in order to get to Iran to do that. The United States, same thing. We can fire missiles at Iran if we wanted to because we have missiles in Iraq. And so we could fire them directly over there. The problem is Iraq's government. So the government in Baghdad, there are essentially two governments in Iraq. There is the government in northern Iraq, which is the Kurdish government. They call that Kurdistan. That's from like Kirkuk northward. And it's a kind of self-governing protectorate of the rest of Iraq. But the government, the actual Iraqi government inside Iraq, they are Shiite. And Iran is Shiite. And they are highly controlled by Iran. They are highly, well, not controlled, highly influenced, let's say. So Iran has a lot of sway over the Shiite government in Baghdad. And we see that now because as the United States has struck back against Shiite militias, this is not the Iraqi army. These are militias funded by Iran that are separate from the Iraqi army, separate from the Kurdish army. They're their own thing. And some of them are actually Syriac militias, right? Which is strange, Christian militias in Iraq. But the Iraqi government doesn't have a lot of control over those guys, and neither does anybody else except for Iran. And as the United States has struck those Shiite militias inside Iraq, now all of a sudden the Iraqi government is saying, we want the United States to leave Iraq. We're going to vote to kick the United States out of Iraq. Now, this is not the first time that's happened. That happened back, under the Trump administration, after the killing in 2020, after the killing of Qasem Soleimani. Now, if you recall who the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was back then, it was General Milley. General Milley being a deep state operative who was really working very hard against the Trump administration in many ways. And so after they struck Qasem Soleimani in 2020, the Iraqi government voted to kick out the U.S. troops. And the U.S. troops kind of just said, yeah, we're not leaving. And so we're still there. But somebody's asking, do I honestly believe there are hostages still alive? Yes, Cheryl, I do believe that. I do believe there are hostages still alive. Maybe not all of them. As a matter of fact, the Israelis announced today that there was one hostage that they had announced a couple weeks ago was murdered inside Gaza. Today they admitted that he was murdered during a rescue operation by the IDF. They did not say whether or not he was murdered by Hamas or by the IDF trying to rescue him. They didn't have any comment on that, but they did say that he was killed during a rescue operation trying to get him out, trying to free him from Hamas. So we know that there are still hostages alive. We actually have seen some proof of life from those guys, a few of them, some of the older ones. But Hamas doesn't have any reason to kill them right now unless they're about to be rescued. They are worth a lot to Hamas when it comes to, negotiations with Israel. And so Hamas is going to try to keep those remaining hostages alive probably for years. I was thinking today it's a good chance that many of those hostages are going to be in Gaza for years unless they can be actually rescued at some point, which, as we have seen, is fraught with danger and risk. Wouldn't toppling the Iranian government bring security to the whole Middle East? Iranian people want it. Yeah. Lou, I would have to agree with you on that. Toppling the current Iranian government would most likely make things much better in the Middle East, at least for a time. Now, that's assuming that whatever replaced the government after they were toppled would be an improvement. But we're not sure about that. But you're right. There are a lot of people inside Iran who want the Iranian government gone. The current government is not popular at all. The economy is terrible in Iran right now. And so it's amazing how people can endure decades of oppression as long as the economy's not too bad. But when the economy starts getting bad, then they really get upset. As long as there's food to eat, they can handle the oppression. That's difficult for an American mindset to comprehend. We wouldn't put up with that kind of oppression. But anyway, so that's what's happening. I've been in Armenia, and I've talked to a lot of Iranians who have come to Armenia. They're allowed to travel to Armenia for tourism. And, it's right next door. So there are a lot of Iranians that you'll run into in Yerevan, for example, and some of them actually speak English. And I've interviewed some of them, and they've all told me things are really, really bad inside Iran right now. So if there was a way to take out the ruling government in Iran, that would be probably a good thing. And it would make Saudi Arabia happy. It would make basically all of Iran's neighbors happy. It would make the United States very happy, and it would make Israel very happy. But because of this concept of a proportional response, nobody is thinking about doing that. Nobody is talking about doing that. Governments around the world have sort of a standing agreement that no matter what we do, if we go to war, the one thing we will never do is try to take out the president or the leader of any. The United States has that policy. We will not assassinate the leader of any country. And we've had that policy for decades. We've done that for a long, long time. Now, we might help support or, arm a movement that would help overthrow a government. We tried that in Syria, and the Obama administration spent billions and billions of dollars arming this group that became the Free Syrian Army, which essentially is now ISIS. It's the leftovers of ISIS. They've reconstituted under the Free Syrian Army using the weapons that the United States supplied to them. So it didn't work out too well. Our hope there was that we would arm a militia inside Syria that would take out Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria. And that guy, unfortunately, is supported by Russia. And so he has held on to power, managed to hold on for more than a decade of civil war inside his country. He does not have control over the eastern third of Syria because the Kurds now control that. But even that is tenuous since you have basically four players that are vying for Syria. You have the Syrian government, of course, which wants to maintain control of Syria. And they're supported by the Russians. You have Turkey, which wants to take the northern part of Syria all along the Turkish border because they say that the Kurds are a terrorist group that is a threat to Turkey. And there are some Kurds that are definitely a threat to Turkey, but not all of them. But Turkey doesn't differentiate. They just say all Kurds are a threat to us. So they want to take over the northern part of Syria. You have Iran, which wants to create this Iranian crescent across Syria into Lebanon so that they can more easily arm Hezbollah fighters in Lebanon. And you have the Kurds, which want their own country. The Kurds are more than 30 million people, 39 million people, and they're the only people group that large in the world that don't have their own country. And they would love to call the eastern third of Syria Kurdistan and the northern part of Iraq as well. But the Kurds now currently inhabit northern Iraq, northern Iran, and southeastern Syria, and part of Turkey even. So they would love to be able to carve out their own country in there. And if you ask me, I think we should encourage them to do so because they're the most moderate of any group, any people group in the Middle East, with the possible exception of Israel. So, having a Kurdistan, an actual country called Kurdistan, would be the best place for us to put a U.S. base in that region because the Kurds have been loyal friends to the United States, even despite the fact that we have betrayed them time and time again and seen them murdered by Iranians, Iraqis, Shiites, Turks, and Syrians and Russians. So the Kurds have been basically killed by everybody, and that is not a good thing for the Kurds, of course. Thank you, Ellen, not Sarah Lee. That's very kind of you. We really appreciate those super thanks and super chats over there. They really help with keeping the channel going and keeping me going. So I'm looking here to see if there's any questions. I hope you can stay in Panama a few more days. Yeah, I'd like to. I'm going to have to go down to the Darien Gap here in Panama here in a couple days, but I'll be reporting from down there. And I will also be reporting from Cartagena the 9th or 8th and 9th, something like that, as we go up there to help take care of these Venezuelan migrant girls who are trying to, like heck, to keep themselves out of prostitution. And it seems like the whole world is against them in that. So we're gonna run over to Cartagena and try to just check in on our girls over there and check and we'll give you a report while we're there of what's going on. So it looks like some of you will get ads in about 30 seconds. So I'm going to skip those ads for this time. You're welcome. Okay, so why is a proportional response not effective? Well, because A, they're not striking the people who actually need to be responded to. That's Iran. So if, Israel confines itself to only killing off Hamas fighters who were in Israel on October 7th, well, they're not going to accomplish their goals, and this is just going to happen again. If anything, a proportionate response actually makes it worse because what it does is it causes it inflames the anger of the people that are these proxies. So the proxies see their cause as righteous. The Shiite militias, for example, in Iraq, they see it. We're striking against the United States. They have their troops here in Iraq, and that's our land, and they shouldn't be here. And so we're doing what God told us to do. We strike back against those guys, and they just get really offended by that. I'm that way. I get highly offended when was I showing a picture that whole time? I get highly offended when people try to kill me. I'm a nice person, and when people try to blow me up or shoot me, it bothers me. So it just offends the people who have committed these strikes against us, but it does not actually end the threat, because the threat is over there in Iran. So what is the right thing to do? This is what I'm getting down to here. I want to get down to what should America and Israel do? Well, if you go back and look at the last time that there was an actual effective response to aggression, that effective response came in World War II, when the United States and our allies went so hard against Germany and the Axis powers that they begged us to stop. So I talked about this yesterday. They surrendered unconditionally, meaning that we don't have any correct, just please stop. We will stop fighting. We'll surrender. We'll give you all our weapons. You can completely disarm us. You can put us in prison if you want to. Whatever you want to do, just stop killing us. That's an unconditional surrender. And the only way really affect an unconditional surrender, especially in the Middle East, is by understanding how our enemy thinks. And the enemies that we have in the Middle East are, they come from a culture that understands one thing, and that's the projection of power. They only understand violence. They understand power and violence. And they will always accede to the strong horse. The strong horse, right now, the strong horse in Gaza is actually the Hamas, because Hamas is still fighting, and they're putting out an incredible amount of propaganda. That all of that propaganda is going to the cell phones of people in Gaza. It's going to the cell phones of people that are pro-Hamas all around the world. And it makes it look like Hamas is winning. And now, Hamas is not winning in Gaza on the ground. But as you've heard me say over and over and over again, okay, so I'll talk about that in a second, Kevin. Well, you've heard me say this over and over and over again, that the strong horse, that what happens on the ground is not as important as what happens in the information battle space. And as long as Hamas continues to win in the information battle space, they don't have to convince you that they're winning, because you're not their audience. They only have to, they're playing to their audience. Their audience is pro-Palestinian people around the world. Most of those are Muslims, many extremist Muslims. And as long as they can convince those extremist Muslims that, yes, we are winning, we are standing up to Israel, and we're killing. I read the Al-Qassam Brigade's Telegram channel. It's in Arabic, but if you pay money, you can get it translated. And those guys are putting out many posts every day saying, we just killed 25 IDF troops. We just killed 15 IDF troops. We just killed 40 IDF troops. And they'll show a bomb going off. They don't ever show the aftermath of the bomb. They just show the explosion. And then the next post is, we just killed 40 IDF troops. Well, they did not just kill 40 IDF troops. They didn't. They're lying or exaggerating or whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't matter because the people who are listening to them want to believe them. And so they believe that they are giving Israel what for inside Gaza, and that they still hold all of Gaza. The northern part in Jabalia refugee camp is being, controlled by Hamas. They're claiming all of this stuff, even when it's not true on the ground. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be true on the ground. They are weaponizing the information against Israel. Now, Israel could win that battle if they would let a whole bunch of journalists into Gaza to show that they're not winning, to show that Hamas does not have control of Jabalia refugee camp. Let me go in and walk through that camp and show people the rubble that's there and show them that Hamas is not in charge, and then you start to win the information war. But it really doesn't matter. What I mean is what is actually true on the ground doesn't matter as much as what the perception is in cyberspace. So if Israel really wants to become the strong horse, they've got to get better at fighting in cyberspace, because they really can't do, what it would actually take would be to carpet bomb Gaza, and not just Gaza, but Lebanon and even Iran, in order to actually win in the kinetic battle space, in a way that is enduring, that would last. The United States and Israel would have to literally carpet bomb parts of Iran. We would have to decapitate Iran. We would have to level so much of Gaza. The Israelis would have to just level so much of Gaza that there's just nothing left. And
incoming call from 970.
Well, we got incoming phone calls, and that's just not going to happen. The world does not have the stomach for the firebombing of Dresden anymore. The world does not have the stomach for Hiroshima or Nagasaki anymore. And you could make a case that that's a good thing. But if there is any end in sight that will actually allow Israel to claim victory, they're going to have to do a better job at winning in the information battle space. Now, they're putting out videos every day. And I'm putting some of those videos up on my channel over at Locals. If you go to chuckholton.com, you can see some videos I put up just today. You can see a video of the explosion in Iran. You can see a video put out by Hamas of them filming IDF soldiers inside northern Gaza. Now, that's not proof that Hamas controls northern Gaza. That's not proof that Hamas is murdering hundreds of Israeli soldiers every day. But they use it as proof because they show that and then they claim something far beyond what they actually showed. And the people who want to believe it will believe it. So if you want to go and watch those things, you can go to chuckholton.com and you can see that Israel is, for example, they just blew up the tunnels under Shifa Hospital. Now, they claim they were able to destroy all the tunnels under Shifa Hospital, that it was an actual hub for military activity by Hamas, and they took a 360-degree camera down into the tunnels and showed, there's a video, I'll put that one up, that shows what it looked like inside those tunnels. There's toilets, there's bedrooms, there's chow halls in there. And then they destroyed all those tunnels under Shifa Hospital. They say that they were able to destroy it without actually damaging the hospital. That would be a trick, because what you had to do is just lower the level, the ground level of Shifa Hospital by about 100 feet. And so if Shifa Hospital is still there, I wouldn't want to be in it because it probably is going to collapse at any time because everything underneath it has been destroyed. All that empty space under there has been collapsed. So the IDF is putting out lots of videos like that. But all Hamas has to say is, well, yeah, that's from the IDF. Don't believe them. They're lying. If there's a tremendous amount of footage that is coming out from independent sources, though, well, then it's harder for Hamas to argue with it. It's harder for Hamas to convince people that they are in control when they're not. Have I run into the something brigade, Afghan Fedayeen Brigade in Syria? I have run across them years ago, but obviously have not hung out with them or anything. But you'll see them, everywhere you go in Syria and Iraq. You have to carry like a pocket full of different patches, and there are checkpoints everywhere. And when you come up on the checkpoint, you look to see what flag is flying over the checkpoint, and then you rip your patch off your shoulder and you dig through your pouch and you pull out the patch that corresponds with the checkpoint and put in on your shoulder, and then drive through and go, hey, how's it going? We're with you guys. It's kind of crazy, but everybody does it, and that's how you do it in Iraq and Syria. You don't want to go through a checkpoint wearing the wrong patch. That would be bad. That would be a bad day. Is the IDF still flooding the tunnels? Gracie, I have not heard anything about them flooding tunnels at the moment. So I don't think they are. I think they've probably stopped that. I should ask Eric Prince if he knows anything more about that. Maybe he can tell us. Does the IDF not have the technology to squash the Hamas false media transmissions? No, they don't have the technology to do that because you'd have to shut off the internet across the world. Hamas has the ability to get that stuff out in various different ways, to get those videos out, and they put it up on Telegram in almost real time. Well, I wouldn't say real time because they do edit it highly. It's highly edited. If you go over to chuckholton.com and watch those videos that Hamas puts out, you'll see what I mean by highly edited. They put graphics in there, little arrows pointing at the bad guys, at the IDF, and they'll rewind and show a slow-mo of the explosion up against the tank, but they never show the aftermath of the explosion because in many cases the explosion really didn't do anything to the tank. It just, dented it, maybe scratched the paint a little. Do you think that when the trucks leave Gaza that there are Hamas leaders in them? They are being searched as they leave Gaza. And I think it would be difficult, though not impossible, for Hamas leaders to get out of Gaza through the southern border with Egypt. And the reason I say it's not impossible is because money talks, and they have a lot of money. And in Egypt, money will get you just about anything you want. Connie and I went to Egypt last year, and every place you go, people are asking you for money, like everywhere. They wouldn't even leave us alone in our own hotel room to knock on the door and ask for money. I finally snapped at a few people, and they got the hint that I didn't want to be bothered. But why didn't the Saudis take on Yemen? Well, they have been fighting Yemen for a long time, and since these recent attacks out of Yemen were not against the Saudis didn't attack the Houthis. They did, however, shoot down some of the drones that were headed for Israel, from what I'm told. So they've got tunnels going to Egypt. Yes, they do. But I would venture to say that the Egyptians know where at least most of those tunnels are. Is Israel on high alert today? Yes, they are. Israel is on high alert. Lebanon is on high alert because everybody is expecting some sort of retaliation from the assassination that happened yesterday in Beirut with 7 Hamas leaders killed. Now, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, was slated to give a speech today long before this assassination happened. And that speech went ahead about 2 hours ago. And I have not heard what he said. But we could expect an escalation by Hezbollah in the coming days for sure if Hassan Nasrallah decides that it's in his best interest. So far, he has decided to stay out of it and to stay out of this fight, and probably because he's very likely to lose his life, or maybe at least command of Hezbollah, if he were to announce that Hezbollah was going to attack Israel. I could be wrong about that, but Israel would not hesitate to take him out if they knew where he was, and you can bet that they're trying to track him every minute. How many U.S. carriers are still helping Israel? There is one carrier group in the Red Sea that as far as I understand, the USS Gerald Ford and its carrier group have pulled back and gone back to Virginia. They don't know if that's, they haven't said if that's a temporary thing or if they're just not wanting to. I would venture to say it's because those sailors have been on duty for months already, and they really needed a break, and they needed to, do some maintenance and refit and that sort of thing. And I would imagine that they will come back especially if things escalate in the region. Okay. Do you think any hostages are still alive? Yes, I do. Is it true that many families in Israel have not enough food? That is not true, Ursula. At least since I was there just a couple weeks ago, there is no shortage of food in Israel. There's no shortage of any supplies or anything. There might be a shortage of money. You could say that Arab Israelis are going to go hungry because their businesses are closed down. And, the Israeli government is providing support. There are some social programs in place to keep people from going hungry if they are in a bad way. But the Arabs that I've talked to, they make most of their money off of tourism, and there are no tourists in Israel right now. So because there are no tourists, that's what are you all thanking me for? Because there are no tourists, they are not. A lot of them are saying that they're going to go bankrupt, and I hate it for them. But those people still support the Palestinians. They still support Hamas. There are very few Arabs that you will find, unless they're Arab Christians, who do not support what happened on October 7th. And even many Israeli citizens who are Arab will not speak out against Hamas, which is crazy. But as far as I'm concerned, if you won't speak out against what happened on October 7th and you're going broke because of it, well, I hate it for you. Too bad. Okay. Frozen? Okay. Did we end the stream? What's going on here? No, we're still on. We've got 1,200 people online, so we're still going. All right, so any other questions? It's about, we got about 9 minutes. Do you think that blasting over... Question, do you think that blasting over speakers, Madeline says? That's not a question. I'm not sure what you're asking me there. Let's maybe re-ask your question, Madeline. I'm still here. Oh, did it cut out for a minute? Yeah, we are in Panama, and normally we have pretty good internet. The reason that it's cutting out is that this is the busiest weekend of the year up here in El Valle, where we live, because there are about 30,000 people in a town of 6,000 people. 30,000 visitors this weekend. And so the internet is not great today, and it'll get better after this weekend. But right now, I'm sorry if the internet is freezing up on you. Forgive me for that. Not much I can do about it. Okay, let's see here. The 2 U.S. Mercury planes are in the air for a few days. Do you know why? No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that. Sorry. What about the Iranian warship in the Red Sea? Well, there is an Iranian warship in the Red Sea. We don't know. There haven't been any confrontations that I know of with U.S. ships or anything like that. But they just moved a warship into the Red Sea, and we'll have to see if anything happens between them and the Western powers that are there. Where can you get a shirt like I'm wearing? Iron sharpens iron. This shirt came from Shields of Strength. If you go to Shields of Strength, my friend Kenny Vaughn owns that company, and this shirt came from him. It's a Iron Sharpens Iron T-shirt from it's a Bible verse. Okay, thank you, brother. Okay, last week. Okay, yeah, Hatun Tosh is in hiding. Let's see. If we lag, just be patient, and we'll probably come right back. Yeah, please hit the like button. Folks, it really helps. We got 1,200 people online. If you want to go right now and hit that like button, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. That is very helpful as well. It doesn't cost you anything, and it's a great way that you can support the reporting that I'm doing here from around the world. So plans for this year, we're going to go to Israel. We're going to go to Armenia a bunch of times. We're going to have several trips to Armenia. We're going to Colombia here in a few days. I'm going down to the Darien Gap. I'm going to do quite a bit of reporting on the immigration crisis. And I'm going to be talking about that more over on the CBN Live that I'll do here later on today. I may go to Burma. I've been invited over there. That would be a long trip, and I probably wouldn't be able to do daily lives while I'm in Burma because of the security situation there. So we'll have to wait and see if that actually works out. And now that our most dangerous warship has left, do you think Iran will get frisky? I don't know, Hazel. We'll have to see. Hello from Mexico. See you in Armenia. All right. Let's hope you come to Armenia with us. Chrissy, would you address the displacement of Palestinians to other countries? There have been lots of ideas floated about displacing Palestinians to other countries. The Palestinians themselves will not agree to do that, and neither will the countries where people want to send them. So it's kind of a dead issue. It's a non-starter. So how's it going with the women in Colombia? Well, we've still got some mothers that have been put in jail. We're going to go try to meet with a lawyer and see if we can help get them out. We're going to also work on getting their children set up in a better situation while we are there. And it's going to be a busy couple of days for sure. Am I going back to Ukraine? I really should go back to Ukraine. There's a lot happening there, and that is something that needs to be reported on. The Russians have been striking very hard. They somehow have managed. They were almost out of precision-guided missiles a year ago. The Russians literally almost ran out of precision-guided missiles. And they were using a lot of inertial-guided missiles that were from the Cold War. So we thought, oh, great, they're going to run out of missiles and then they're going to be done. Well, they have managed to scrape together a bunch more precision-guided missiles, both by manufacturing those missiles inside Russia and by buying them from places like Iran and North Korea. And North Korea is like the missile capital of the world. And so I would venture to say that the majority of the missiles that Russia is using against Ukraine now came from North Korea. North Korea needs the money very badly. Russia needs the missiles very badly. And there you go. So they have apparently stored up something like 500 missiles, precision-guided missiles, to use against Ukraine, and they're now unleashing those against Ukraine in waves of 100 or more at a time. Fortunately for Ukraine, they have a pretty robust air defense capability, and they are shooting down those Patriot missiles that we provided them have been very helpful. They are shooting down most of the missiles. Some of them are getting through. There were like 12 people killed in Kyiv yesterday by a large missile attack. And but those, you could make a case that those missile attacks are more costly for Russia than they are for Ukraine. The people who die notwithstanding, obviously every death, especially senseless deaths of innocent people in Kyiv and elsewhere around Ukraine, is a tragedy, should not happen. People should be prosecuted in the International Court of Law for these strikes. It's terrible, terrible, terrible for Ukraine. But from an actual strategic or tactical standpoint, Russia's not getting a lot of benefit out of these attacks. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these attacks, and most of them get shot down. So they force Ukraine to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. And I guess their strategy here is to force Ukraine to use up its air defense missiles, most of which come from the West. That's one thing that Ukraine has a hard time creating inside Ukraine. They have to buy their air defense missiles from other countries. And as the aid is drying up, it's going to get more and more difficult for Ukraine to shoot down all those missiles. Now, just imagine how devastating it would be to Kyiv if the Russians fired 100 missiles and all 100 of them got through. And that would be absolutely horrific. The death toll would be staggering. And you know, so that may be what Russia's strategy is here. They're trying to, it's a race against time. They're trying to make Ukraine use up its air defense missile capability, and then it could actually fly airplanes over Ukraine and just carpet bomb them like Dresden. And they would do it. Because if Ukraine used up its air defense capabilities, it's a sitting duck. And that would be one scenario where Russia could win. Now, the United States has pulled back quite a bit in its support of Ukraine just because it's running thin. We're getting spread thin. Israel, we're trying to rebuild our, we can't build that many missiles in a year either. And it's taken us many years to build the missiles that we gave to Ukraine already. So, we've pulled back a little bit on our support for Ukraine. Of course, the Republicans in Congress are trying to stop all support for Ukraine, but that would not stop everything. There are two different ways that Ukraine can continue to receive support, and that's through our partners in NATO. So in Western Europe, they can give out of their own stockpiles, or the United States could do an end run around the Republicans by the Biden administration doing an aid package to Lithuania or to Latvia or to Finland or Sweden or someplace like that. And then Sweden could give give some of its current weapons to Ukraine. This is what happened during the Iran-Contra crisis back in the 1980s. The Boland Amendment back then was a Democrat-passed amendment that forbade the Reagan administration, the Republican Reagan administration, from giving or selling weapons to the Contras in Nicaragua in order to try to overthrow the Sandinistas. Daniel Ortega, the Sandinistas, that same Daniel Ortega who's now still the president of Nicaragua. And the Democrats didn't want the Reagan administration to do that. So they passed a law that we could not give any money or weapons to the Contras. So what we did instead was Oliver North went and talked. There was a deal that was going to happen between Israel, They were going to sell some of their surplus weapons, and the arms dealer was in Lebanon, and he was putting them together with a militia in Iran that was trying to overthrow the Iranian government. So that arms dealer came to Oliver North and say, "Hey, if you put your foot on the scale for me, if you put in a good word for me, so that I get the business, because it's a tens of millions of dollars deal, then that arms dealer in Lebanon said, I will donate money to the Contras out of my own pocket." And so that's what they did. And then Oliver North said, "Hey, wait a minute, that's a good idea. Let's go to other of our allies around the world, like Saudi Arabia." So he went to the king of Saudi Arabia and said, "Hey, we're not allowed to help the Contras right now, but it would really make our president happy if you guys would agree to help them in the meantime until we can get this Boland Amendment reversed." And the king of Saudi Arabia said, "Sure, I like Reagan. I will give $30 million a month to the Contras." And that's what he did. So in that way, they were able to do an end run around the Boland Amendment, and it ended up leading to the Iran-Contra scandal. But anyway, that's another longer story. Bottom line is that the Biden administration can and is doing the same thing right now to try to continue to help Ukraine. And so much of the money that's gone to Ukraine has not actually gone directly to Ukraine, like we're sending dollars to Ukraine. It's actually gone to Poland. And it's helped Poland we've done loan guarantees to Poland in a deal that saw Poland buying American military hardware and replacing the old military equipment that they had, which was left over from the Soviet Union. What they did with that old Soviet equipment is they gave it to Ukraine. So in that way, the United States is not actually helping Ukraine directly. We're just helping Poland, and that enables Poland to help Ukraine. So the Biden administration would theoretically be able to continue doing that for some time if they wanted to, and they do want to. So Douglas says, was Oliver North really a crook? Absolutely not. Douglas, Oliver North is actually a very close friend of mine. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, Oliver North is a fine Christian American. He is a fine American. He is a patriot. He loves America. He was attacked by the left, by the Democrats. What they did is they twisted that whole story of Israel selling weapons to a faction inside Iran that wanted to overthrow the Iranian government, to Oliver North selling American weapons to the Iranian government. You see the difference there? It wasn't Oliver North selling weapons. It was Israel. And they weren't selling them to the Iranian government. They were selling them to a faction, a militia against the Iranian government. But the Democrats twisted the story to be Oliver North was selling weapons to the Iranian government and using it to buy drugs in Latin America. None of that was true. Those were absolute falsehoods. And I know because I've not only spoken to people in Nicaragua about that were involved, but I've also spoken to the people who were actually running drugs into Latin America, and they'll tell you, yeah, we didn't have anything to do with Oliver North. They were connected, in the press. The press, saw a juicy story and ran with it, even though it wasn't true. What city do you fly into for Armenia? Yerevan, Philip. We go to Yerevan, which is the capital of Armenia. Okay, so let's see here. Much of U.S. aid to Ukraine is going to the U.S. defense industry. That's very true. Yeah, a lot of that, is that Havoy? I can't pronounce your name, I'm sorry. Yeah, much of that aid is going to the U.S. defense industry. What I mean is the Pentagon gives $3 billion of weapons, old weapons that they were going to get rid of anyway. They probably would have gone to Colombia, or they would have gone to, Kosovo or Poland or someplace like that. And instead they're giving them to Ukraine. and then they're giving the Pentagon $9 billion, 3 times as much, to replace those weapons. And that is all part of the package that is aid for Ukraine, but it's not actually $9 billion going to Ukraine. It's only $3 billion, and it's $3 billion we would have been giving away anyway. Back to the full to gap answer. Okay, that's cute. Does Israel expect Iran to have any sophisticated weapons? Iran does have many sophisticated weapons, but hopefully not like atomic weapons anytime soon. So far, from what we understand, Iran does not have atomic weapons. Okay. Let's see what else. Let's see here. Question. Why there seems to be no accounting of the arms sent to Ukraine? Well, because you're listening to the wrong media. I've been reporting on this extensively. There is a tremendous amount of accountability between what in what is going to Ukraine. I went and did several reports on that, where I went to the border of Ukraine and Poland and picked up the aid, there, and followed the aid all the way out to the front lines. Interviewed the people in the government of Ukraine who are in charge of accountability, and I verified that there is a very robust accountability process, to the point where, believe it or not, the United States could likely shut off some of the weapons that we have given to Ukraine if we thought they were being used in a manner that we weren't on board with. Or if they got, say, sold out the back door or something like that, we would know. Okay, those HIMARS units that we sent to Ukraine, we can track those things. We know where they are at all times. The U.S. military has that capability. And so if they were being sold to, Korea or someplace, we would know about it, and we would be able to put a stop to it. Not sure if you already addressed this since I joined late. Have you seen the reports on some U.S. capitals being evacuated due to threats? I have not. If that happened, it didn't happen since I was watching the news this morning. It may have happened since I've been online with you guys. Do you think oil prices will be high this year in America? Gas prices, gasoline prices, probably. Natural gas prices are surprisingly not. I was just checking natural gas prices today, and they're actually about exactly the same price as they were 5 years ago. Natural gas prices right now, despite all of the people who have been saying the sky is falling, and natural gas is going to dry up, and with these pipelines coming out of Russia being closed down, that there's going to be a shortage of natural gas. The United States has upped its natural gas production more than 15% in the past year, and that's a significant increase in the total amount of natural gas that's available on the market. And so the price of natural gas is right now about $2.64, and it was about $2.40 something cents 5 years ago. So it did spike to well over $6 a cubic meter, but it right now is back down. So very surprising, actually. What about all the dollars we've sent to pay public servants of Ukraine? Less than 20%, about 24%, if I remember right, of the dollars, the actual dollars. So about 20% of the total amount of money that's been quote unquote earmarked for Ukraine, which is, like you say, you hear these numbers thrown around, hundreds of billions of dollars. It's less than $100 billion that's been actually spent on Ukraine. But most of that was equipment and ammunition and stuff like that. There's only about $20 billion that's actually been given to Ukraine. And of that, only about 25% of it was going to pay for the public servants in Ukraine, because Ukraine's economy is in shambles right now. And we got to keep the government operating people otherwise would not be getting paid and would not, the economy would collapse. So in some sense, the United States is propping up the Ukrainian economy for the time being, or at least helping to, along with other partners. But not all of that money has gone to the Ukraine, to them. And it is certainly, if you have read that Vladimir Zelensky is buying yachts and mansions all over the world, that is Russian propaganda. It is false. It is not happening. If you've heard Scott Ritter talking about that, Scott Ritter is a clown. I'm sorry. He is a tool of Russian propagandists, and it's wrong. It's wrong. I know Vladimir Zelensky's, some of his inner circle, who are very, very close with him, who literally sit right next to him in their offices. And he is not going out and buying mansions and yachts with that money. It's not happening, okay? What was the purported purpose of the Obama administration working with Iran? Well, the Obama administration's tack was, if we are nice to them, they'll be nice to us. And that is a very, very naive foreign policy, because those people are never going to be nice to us. If Israel ceased to exist, they would still attack the West and the United States. They don't hate Israel because of the United States. I'm sorry, they don't hate the United States because of Israel. They hate Israel because of the United States. Thank you, Travis. Your question is, what do you think the U.S. will do about North Korea's threats lately? Nothing. I don't think the U.S. will do anything. North Korea is a lot like the Houthis. They're just kind of a clown show. They could be a threat to South Korea for sure, and to the U.S. troops there, but they know better. Because we could wipe out North Korea in very short order if we wanted to, and everybody knows it. So North Korea tries to stay relevant by rattling its sabers and, just like the Houthis are doing. We support Iran, whatever. But they're not a threat in any real way, because they know that the minute that they actually attacked any U.S. interest, they would cease to exist. The Kim Jong-un, the president of North Korea, president for life, his reign would come to a screeching halt if they ever did attack the United States. So they're going to do things to nibble around the edges and puff themselves up and act a big game. But again, they're not doing that for our benefit. They're doing that for the benefit of their own people, to make their own people who don't have access to the truth of the news of what's going on think that their leader is strong and in control. That's all. Okay? It really helps if you put your questions in all caps. And those who donate, and what that does, it pops it up in a different color so I can really see them. I appreciate those very much. Kim Jong-un's sister is the one to be worried about. I can't disagree with that. All right. Well, that's all I've got for today. We've gone a little long today, but you guys had a lot of questions, and that's good. I appreciate all of you. Please go over to chuckholton.com. You can subscribe over there and get access to a lot of deep dives into stuff about the Ukrainian war, about the war in Israel and elsewhere. Immigration comes to mind. Allah, none. I don't think that China played a significant role in this. They are happy it's happening, but they didn't play a significant role in it. Anyway, chuckholton.com, or as Connie puts the link up there, you can go there, and if you subscribe, you get access to all kinds of stuff. If you don't subscribe, you can subscribe without being a supporter, and you can still access most of the stuff I put up there. But I appreciate all of you. That helps me be more independent and have more control over where I go, and I can go more places that you want me to go. So that's good. So thank you all very much. Let's go ahead and pray real quick because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and boy, we need prayer, don't we? Lord, thank you so much that we don't have to be afraid of the things that are happening around the world, that we don't have to be fearful of the arrow that flies by day. We don't have to be fearful of the pestilence that comes at night. Lord, we can be absolutely fearless because we submit ourselves to you and we know that you're in control. We know that that doesn't mean necessarily that everything's going to go great for us. There still will be hardship that comes into our lives and tragedies and things like that. But in the midst of those tragedies, you will be there. You promise that you'll be there for us. And man, what a great promise that is. Father, we pray for the people who are hurting wherever they are around the world. We pray that you would thwart the plans of evil men and cause them to be angry with each other, cause them to have division and rancor and hardship and confusion in their ranks. We pray that Israel would have peace, Father, that the hostages would come home, that you would comfort those hostages right where they are right now. You would send your angels to minister to them just like you did to Christ. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, folks, thank you very much for watching. God bless you, and we'll see you again next time.